Merry Christmas, everybody. It is Christmas season, right? Yeah, it is. Welcome here to Cowboys Overtime on StarTelegram.com, brought to you by the great people at Window Nation. I am Fort Worth Star Telegram columnist Mac Engel. He is Mr. Nick Harris, fresh off of, we won't talk about what we're going to talk about. Nick, how are you? You look amazing, by the way. How are you? Scale 1 to 10. 10 being amazing, 1 being not amazing.
I feel 10. Let's get after it. I'm feeling great. Let's do it.
All right. You feel 10. You look 12. You look like you're a solid 12 right now. Nick, I have bad news, even though it is the holidays, and I realize you don't observe Christmas, but we are in the giving spirit. We're in a spirit of hope, optimism. It's all going to be better. It's all going to be better. But I got to tell you, I'm just not feeling the vibe of the Dallas Cowboys after a crushing, dispiriting Simpsons loss on Monday night to my Cincinnati Bengals. How about that? Bengals and Cowboys pennants right behind me. What were the odds of that? 27-20 in a game where they could have won against the Bengals. Unfortunately, now the Cowboys are 5-8. It's very disappointing. Nick, I don't know any other way to say it. I don't think the Cowboys are going to win the Super Bowl this year. Do you?
No. There's still a chance. There's still a chance.
Okay.
This loss, I felt like the last 10 minutes of this game really sucked the air out of the building. And I'm not talking about AT&T Stadium. I'm talking about the Star in Frisco. You look at how this loss came together, and with 10 minutes left in the game, you see DeMarvion Overshown go down, which we'll talk about in a minute. Yep. And then you see in that final 2-minute stretch, a blocked punt that looks like it's going to set up this offense with prime opportunity to score the game-winning touchdown and or field goal. Instead, it's attempted to be recovered by Amani Oruwariye. Instead, he kind of fumbles it, but blunders it around. It bounces off his shoulder, and it gives the Bengals a free first down. And it's crazy because the same guy who allowed Nick Vigil to come through and block the punt ended up being the guy who was able to secure the ball. So at the end of the day, he's like, first down, let's go, just how we drew it up. So yeah, shout out to a rookie linebacker, Mayema Jongmeta. So he had a big day on Monday with a first down. One first down that helped the Bengals win that game. But yeah, the vibes were certainly not great in the locker room, not only with the injury to Overshown, but just talking about this loss and how it came together. You know, this team, whether we were still talking about how their playoff chances were very slim, they felt like they were high if they won out. He was like, as long as we win out, we have an opportunity to sneak in with a couple of things to happen. Now they need a lot of things to happen, and I think the locker room realizes that, and you could see that spirit kind of get crushed in the locker room on Monday night after the game.
Let's talk for a minute about that punt block, because obviously there were a lot of other elements to that game that are worth looking at, including the running game and play calling. But I want to talk about that punt block because I think you were at the game in 2021 where virtually the exact same thing happened for the Cowboys. Rookie Nashawn Wright blocks the punt. It should be against the Denver Broncos. It should be Cowboys ball, but instead a Cowboys player touches it. The Broncos recover. Now that game was a little bit more lopsided than Monday night's game against Cincinnati. But still, it's the same idea. And we asked Mike McCarthy after that game in 2021, is that a bad rule? And Stephen Jones went so far as to say after the game in 21, Nick, that was a rule that they should revisit as a league. And I'm not making, you and I are making excuses for this team, but I'm of a mind, I'm sorry, you've blocked the kick. You have performed the low percentage play. It wasn't like the Cowboys regained possession, but to me, this is kind of like you blocked the kick. The ball should be yours after whomever touches it, unless you return it for a touchdown. Once I do think it's a bad rule. And obviously, do you?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from, Mac, but I also understand like the spirit of the rule being that if the rule is if a player beyond the line of scrimmage touches the ball from the opposing team, it's a live ball. And the spirit of the rule is more so in the sense that, like, hey, let's say it's a shanked punt and the punt only goes 9 yards and tries to be recovered, then that's a live ball if it's muffed or fumbled at that point. Now, if it's blocked, now I see where you're kind of coming in with it. Like, if it's blocked, then it should automatically be ball. But I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily agree, just because there would be so much gray area that would have to be worked out within that rule. And it's been a rule that stood in the game since the very beginning. I think it's a situation where the Cowboys just should have known, or Amani Oruwariye should have known what was happening in that situation. And you talk about bad breaks, like, not only did the ball bounce the way it did and what does the block bounce the way it did, all of that, it also happened on the Bengals sideline. Like, who's to say that if this didn't happen near the Cowboys sideline, there's no way Oruwariye is touching that ball, because everyone on the sideline, they would be trying to tackle him to make sure that he did not touch that ball. And also,
wait, hang on. But Nick, I want to push back on that for a second, and Mike, because Mike McCarthy said it after the game. The guy's back is turned to the block, and he turns, and that ball's coming at him. And I understand, and I don't know what I hear what you're saying, that if it's a live ball, that sideline's yelling at him, but it happens so fast. His instinct is grab the ball.
Yeah.
Excuse me. That's why it was the wrong play. Everything you said is right. I can't disagree with any of it. I've often thought, though, if you've made that block, ball should be yours.
Yeah.
Shank, whatever else, forget it. No way. A block, you got your hand on it, ball's yours. You're right. The rule's been around forever. I just think, and it was the one tiny, tiny part where I gave the player a little bit of a pass, which is it's coming right at him. He doesn't know why it's coming right at him. Do you buy any part of that?
Yeah, see, that one's tough for me, because how else would the ball have gotten? My only thought was maybe he thought it was like a bad fake, and the ball was just kind of in the area. That's the only way I could assume that he would think the ball would be right there. Other than that, there's no other situation where the ball is right there. This is just my belief after talking with him in the locker room this week and understanding the play as it looked. He was looking at that ball for about a second and a half before he touched it. He had more than enough time to get out of the way of it. I'm also allergic to bad football, Mac. I hope you're
I got this call.
So
when you look at that play, and you and I were sitting right there, and I'm sure you and I kind of had the same reaction, Nick, which is this is the most 2024 Cowboys play ever, right? So I can see why this is. Unfortunately, I have to share this message with you, Nick. I don't know if you see it. Our reporter, this is so great. Our producer, rather, Candy Bolden, you can't see her on screen. She just sent this text message to me. My computer just shut down. Trying to fix this. All good. We're still rolling live, you say. So thank you very much. That was good. We have, unfortunately, these computers that sometimes shut down for reboots and software updates. And I swear to God, they do them not at 2 a.m. when we're all asleep, but right in the middle of work. And there's nothing you could do about it. So, Candy, it's all good whenever you get back. When you looked at this particular play, though, and I thought, okay, this is the most Cowboys thing ever. And I did think for that second, the ball's coming right at him. He's got a split second to make a decision. Do you think even as he turns around, do you think he could have gotten out of the way, Nick?
I think he could. Like, looking back at it, he had over a second and a half to look at that ball.
Then you got a duck.
You hear Maris Leofow, or you see Maris Leofow, and you see Kevontae Turpin in the area going like this.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, truthfully, I know Oruwariye just got off of the injured reserve for this game, but if I'm Leofow, I'm clotheslining him. I'm getting him out of the way.
Tackle him.
I'm getting him out of the way of the ball. Like, sorry, dog, I'm going to have to take one for the team here. But
do you think that – Cincinnati came in as a 6.5-point favorite. And, of course, they covered because Joe Burrow had a long touchdown pass, and it wasn't even a long pass. It was a long catch and run to Jamar Chase, who might be the best receiver in the NFL right now, him or Justin Jefferson. Do you think the Cowboys should have won that game?
Yeah, I think they should have. And looking back at the opportunities, there were a couple of opportunities. It didn't really come down to that block punt, in my opinion. I think I think the bigger indictment against this team was 5.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. You get the ball back on your own 30-yard line. You start the drive with a 14-yard run from Rico Dowdle, and then you go incomplete pass, and you punt the ball. and you
That's
take
I'm glad.
barely
That's
a minute
right.
off
Yep.
the clock. And I think that's more of an indictment on this team than that punt block opportunity, just because there's so much you can explain away with that punt block. You can't explain that one away.
And that comes back to then who calls those plays? No, and I'm not. I don't know if you know that or not. I mean, I'm seriously. I mean, is that a McCarthy decision? Is that a Schottenheimer decision? Is that Cooper Rush at the line with 2 plays and opting out?
That's a Mike McCarthy. That's a Mike McCarthy call.
Then that's awful.
Yeah.
Because Rico Dowdle, we'll talk about here in a minute, was running all over by far and away the worst run defense in the NFL. It's a JV defense the Bengals have. They have been given a top 2 NFL player right now who is killing it in Joe Burrow. And their defense is awful. There's nobody there. Forget the sacks that Trey Hendrickson has racked up. Nick, you and I could line up and average 8 yards a rush. Rico Dowdle was killing them. They were running all over them. And I can't figure out, why would you run the ball? Why would you throw Cooper Rush, not Dak Prescott, Cooper Rush 3 straight times? Yeah. I can't get it. Do you have any rationalization for that at all, Nick?
The only thing I can think of is just say to make sure that Rico stays fresh as you're going forward into the fourth quarter. But that's the time you need him, and that's an opportunity with roughly 5 minutes on the clock. Hey, you go take 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes off the clock, and you score a dang touchdown, and you win the game. And that one's tough to explain away for me. Whether it's Rico Dowdle getting those carries, or maybe cycling in who's to say, a 4-time Pro Bowler that you have on your bench to at least get a couple carries as well. So. If only they had that.
Yeah. And it's funny. You mentioned Ezekiel Elliott. I have literally forgotten he's on the team.
Yeah.
He shouldn't have. Yeah. He shouldn't have been on the team in the first place. But the fact that they've finally committed to Rico Dowdle as RB1 and kicked Ezekiel way down the priority list, there are moments when I think, oh, I forgot he's still with the team. Yeah. Let's move on to another situation, and that is coaches, not just the head coach, although we're going to talk about him here for a second, because a potential offseason candidate is no longer on the board. Bill Belichick surprised everybody when he accepted the head coaching position at the University of North Carolina this week, which basically tells everybody that the NFL had told Bill in no uncertain terms, great job, Hall of Fame coach, you're not going to be a head coach in this league anymore, which includes the Cowboys. I never really thought he was as much of a candidate as some other outlets thought, purely because I thought that I don't think Jerry and Steven wanted to hire a Bill Parcells type personality again. Yeah. That's my own feeling based on conversations that I had many years ago. Do you think Bill Belichick, had he remained a free agent and they moved on from McCarthy, would have really been a viable candidate to be the head coach of the Cowboys?
I think he would have gotten an interview at the very least. I think there's at least enough intrigue there, and the resume is there to justify at least bringing him in the building. I get the sense, though, that if this team moves on from McCarthy, they want to go younger. I think there's been a lot of heat around lack of creativity, lack of innovation, and I think the solution to that is going younger and getting a fresh mind. Jerry Jones talked on the radio this morning when he was kind of asked about a similar topic, and he's like, hey, I've gone to the college route twice before to go get a head coach. First 2 times I went and hired a head coach. I went and got Jimmy Johnson from Miami and Barry Switzer from Oklahoma. Granted, he hasn't done it since, but he's – I guess showing that he's open-minded to doing so. Now, who's to say he's going to go get a college head coach? Who knows? But I think he could go.
Which college head coach would you sit there and say that guy? Because we've seen time and again. The last one I think was Urban Meyer, and that was a disaster. But who in the college ranks right now would you look at and say that guy might be an NFL head coach? It didn't work with Matt Rule. I mean, the Matt Rule era in Carolina was a fiasco. Now that you might say that ownership had something to do with that, but is there anybody that you see in the college level right now and say that guy might make the transition?
Can I riff with you a little bit in Bill O'Brien?
I don't. I know.
That's a joke to me. That's a complete joke to me.
I get. But he has a pro background.
Yeah,
and that's I'm like, they're not going to do it. But I get that concept. I mean, I know you're joking, but I get the concept of it. Is there anybody else? Because there's one guy I'm thinking of. I don't think he would do it. And I know Lincoln Riley was a name, although his name is Mud right now.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else out there you would say, maybe, sure?
I would look at two names, and I'd be curious to know if they would make that jump, especially with the way their programs are trending right now.
Mm-hmm.
And Dan Lanning at Oregon and Kirby Smart at Georgia. And
you think Kirby would? I hadn't thought of that one. Why
I'm
Kirby?
not necessarily saying he would. It's just like those are two guys that I think could make that jump. I don't think neither of them would, though. I'd be curious to know about Dabo Swinney just because I know he hates the NIL world. He hates the transfer portal. He's never used the transfer portal in the time that he's been at Clemson. So I wonder if it just gets to a point to where Clemson's like, hey, you got to use these resources or get out. And so I wonder about maybe him making that jump one day. But even then, I'm not 100% sure that I would have the confidence of him being an NFL head coach.
When I look at that, when I look at guys who've made that jump, and Lanning strikes me, and I don't think he's going to do it either. I think he's had a great job. But there's a certain temperament that you have to have for a pro coach and for a pro job, because I know everybody, and I've certainly been guilty of it in the past, who has said, well, NCAA football is more and more like the pros. It's not. It's not. And I've talked to Cowboys players about this who are playing in the one who sticks out. I talked to Deuce Vaughn about it, and he said it is different. You're getting paid. You're not a pro.
Yeah.
It's just different now. In college, it's a job, but you're not a pro. It's just different. And I look at the one that when Jacksonville made the decision to hire Urban Meyer, I didn't hate it. Sometimes you got to be bold and try things different. It flopped. Then they brought in Doug Peterson. Whatever you think about Doug Peterson, he did very well in Philadelphia. That's a pro coach. Mm-hmm. And you could see the Jaguars played differently as a result. Now, I know they haven't had a good year this season, but I do think sometimes it's not such a terrible idea to look at a college guy and take a shot. The problem is, the Cowboys hit on the winning lottery ticket in Jimmy Johnson. The Eagles thought they were going to do it in Chip Kelly. Didn't really work. Yeah. There's just so few examples of those guys who've made that jump. And other than Dan Lanning, I can't think of anybody. I know the one, it's funny, the one we didn't say is the one that people have had fun running with, and that's Deion Sanders. Yeah. I don't think Deion would do it. Do you?
No, he's been actively recruiting his guys and keeping them in the portal or keeping them out of the portal and things of that nature. I've had a lot of conversation over the last couple of days just about where he is right now from a mindset perspective. Seems like he's locked into Colorado for the future.
So with that being said, let's just play this out. Mike McCarthy comes back.
Yeah.
It's still on the table. I think that loss, I think some things have happened within the game. You've mentioned creativity, play calling, et cetera. They would say, well, maybe it's just time. Okay. Let's just say he does come back. There are going to be staff changes. Would they bring back Mike Zimmer as the defensive coordinator?
I think they would. I think the big change that they would have to make in bringing this staff back would be changing the offensive play caller.
So Schottenheimer's gone.
Well, not only Schottenheimer, but McCarthy as well as a play caller. I'd be curious to know what they do as far as that goes, because that would be the second big question to answer, because it's tough to justify or sell bringing this entire staff back. And you can make a change at defensive line coach or linebackers or running backs, but if your coordinators and your play callers are the same, you're bringing back the same exact system. So they would have to justify why it would make sense to bring back McCarthy. And unless it is to change the play caller, I don't necessarily see that as a reality.
Then the other one, Will, before we go to break, is the special teams coach. Now, you broke the story that Jerry had some choice words with Bones Fossil in the locker room after the game, because the blocked punt in question, there was not a blocked punt play on. It was set up for a return, but the Bengals didn't even block it. I mean, that's just how incredibly unlucky this sequence was for the Cowboys. They didn't even have a block on, but the guy just ignored his man. Cowboys had a free run, block it. Doesn't go their way. You could see on TV cameras from Jerry's perch there inside AT&T Stadium, he was hot that happened. And he took his frustrations out on Fossil in the moment. the Cowboys on special teams since he took over, they've been very interesting. You know what I mean? They've had these wild sequences sometimes on special teams, and sometimes they've been enormously successful. Certainly hitting on Brandon Aubrey is, I mean, wow, what a find.
And Turpin.
And I was going to say, just Turpin, two guys in the UFL who have just been, Pro Bowl, all-pro caliber players at their position. Great for them. And then other times they have sequences. You're like, what are you doing? Trick plays, pass attempts deep in their own end from the punter that blow up in their face. The crazy sequence against the Bengals. Do you see him coming back under any scenario?
That one's tough too, because I don't know, the special teams unit. It's kind of this entire team in a nutshell. Like, look, the front of the group and the bright faces, they look great. But then once you start looking at everybody in between, you start to see where the struggles are happening. You start to see where the downfalls are. I don't know, that one's a tough one, just because Bones Fossil has been not only so great to us in the media, but he's been great to work with overall with some of those special teams guys. Those special teams guys, they ride for him. He's the one that manages all the practices. He's the one that's leading the practices and changing them between period to period. He's the one that does ball drills with the entire team. So he works with every guy on the field. It's not just his special teams guys. He would be a tough one to replace, but I could see Jerry Jones justifying his replacement. Absolutely.
So do I. And I think it's too bad because I think he's a pretty good special teams coach. I've been around a few of them. Sometimes you're right. It's sort of a random one. It's an important one, but I don't think he gets the credit he deserves sometimes. And, sequences like that, you can't blame the coach. You're going to, but you can't. All right. We've got a lot more to talk about here on Cowboys Overtime. But first, let's hear from our friends at Window Nation.
Window Nation, the star of window replacement and proud partner of the Dallas Cowboys, can help you fill the house this season with savings. Buy 2 windows, get 2 free, and make no interest payments for 60 months, 5 full years. Fill your house for a customized authentic Dallas Cowboys jersey while supplies last. You could even help fill the Cowboys house and win tickets to a game. Visit windownation.com/Cowboys now for details. Call 866-95-NATION. Window Nation, proud partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
Thank you very much, Window Nation. Back here on StarTelegram.com's Cowboys Overtime. All right, Nick, if you could have any Cowboys jersey, any player from any era, who do you get?
Marion Barber.
Oh, Predator.
The Barbarian, absolutely.
Marion, I covered him. He's a unique guy. It's a very sad story what happened to him. He's no longer with us. That's it. What was it? I'm obviously, you just love the way he ran.
Yeah, and I was fortunate enough whenever I was working with the Cowboys last year to do a documentary on Marion Barber. And
really?
So, yeah, got to spend a lot of time with his family and Lawrence Maroney, who was a college teammate of his and best friend of his, and really connected with that story. So, yeah, Marion Barber for sure.
I'm probably going to go with it's tough. I'm either going to go with Roger Staubach, because he was probably one of the very first players I ever remember following, because my grandmother was a Cowboys fan because they were on Monday Night Football so much. She lived in West Virginia. So it'd be either Roger, probably be Roger. That's a safe choice.
Yeah.
Or Troy Aikman, only because this is an obnoxious name drop. They both did forwards for books that I wrote. So,
hey, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Now we're going to take a very hard right turn into a very downer of a subject. You mentioned it near the top. The last couple of minutes, 10 minutes so the game against Cincinnati were just kind of a mess and really sad, because one of the Cowboys' really big bright spots this season, unfortunately now, is probably out for all of 2025. I'm talking about second-year linebacker DeMarvion Overshown, who suffered a devastating knee injury, torn ACL, MCL, PCL. I was amazed. I was, when I watched it play out, I thought, oh no, because, you and I were watching it and we both knew something that was very, very serious. But when they didn't get the cart, he was helped off with the trainers to the locker room. I thought, well, maybe it's not awful. And then it was awful. Yeah. Now there is one tiny piece of good news that came from the diagnosis of this injury. And can you please, I think I understand there's no nerve damage. Is that correct, Nick?
Correct. Yeah, and the reason that's a good thing. You making noise over there?
Yeah, got the lid.
The reason that is a good thing is Jalen Smith. Whenever he had the injury at Notre Dame and he got drafted to the Cowboys, he had nerve damage, and it drastically impacted the rest of his career and how he moved. DeMarvion Overshown, it's going to be a tough recovery for him. It's going to be at least 12 months. I don't think we, at the very earliest, see him until potentially December of next year. But at the very least, whenever that full recovery is made, it is expected that he can be at full go. But, man, that's going to be a tough one. It's going to be really tough, not only from a physical standpoint because he basically tore his entire knee, but it's the mental aspect of going through back-to-back torn ACLs on both legs. It makes you question a lot of things and how you move, how you play. Now, granted, DeMarvion Overshown, the mindset that he has and kind of the tenacity that he put forward in his rehab the first time around, it wouldn't surprise me if he comes back and he's just the same exact guy we saw on the field before that injury happened. But it's going to be really tough to get there.
You know, the one that was one of the harder ones that I've seen in a while. Mm-hmm. The last one I can remember that I saw that really, bothered me. I remember watching Allen Hurns, the Cowboys receiver, who tore his ACL. It was just a gruesome injury against the Seahawks in the playoffs back in 19, I think it was. No, maybe it was before. Yeah, it was 2019.
It was 19, yep.
19, and that was just awful. It was just awful. I don't know if you were there for that game, Nick, or not. It was devastating. It was just terrible. And the difference was between that Allen and DeMarvion is that the linebacker is much younger. And, younger, you do have a better chance of coming back and being the same guy. Given the nature of the kind of injury, this one, not the other one, this one, should we think at all that maybe his career is over?
I don't think so. I've been looking at Navarro Bowman's injury back in the mid-2010s as a similar kind of scope as this one. Bowman, he tore his MCL, ACL, PCL, and meniscus in a really bad injury. He missed the entirety of the following season, and he returned the following year and was still a first-team All-Pro, led the NFL in tackles that year. So
was he with San Francisco?
He was with San Francisco, yeah. Okay. So obviously it's a different person, different scenario, different circumstance, and Bowman wasn't coming off a separate ACL injury the year prior, but looking at Overshown and understanding who he is, and I got word this week that he's already asking about rehab and what he can do in these days before surgery, and hey, how can we attack this, immediately? And that was less than 24 hours after the injury had happened. So he's ready to attack it and get after it again. He wants to be back on the field, but the thing that I hate most for Overshown in this scenario is no matter what happens, let's say he does come back and he's even better than he was before, this really messes his money up. And it's really tough. It's best case scenario, he comes back with a few games left in his third season, and then he can't really prove that he's worthy of an extension until that fourth year. So he'd be playing in a contract year, hoping that he doesn't get injured again. And, this it's a physical sport and things happen. It could be a shoulder that keeps him out for 3 or 4 games or something like that. So, his money's going to look a lot different than if he did not have this injury.
I thought about that too. And he gets the full value of his rookie contract regardless. I mean, because the Cowboys are obviously, they're not going to give up on him, right? This is not going to be an injury settlement. The only question I have about that is, will they, because they did it with Jalen Smith, there's no scenario where they keep him on the roster, do they?
Talking about DeMarvion Overshown?
Yeah.
For what do you mean?
It's like, I couldn't remember. Remind me. Remember there was like the Cowboys did something with Jalen Smith. Either, I can't remember what year it was. It's like they carried him on the roster even though he wasn't going to play. And I can't remember what they did, Nick, specifically about that. But it was the idea that maybe he'll come back, maybe he'll come back, maybe he'll come back. And they kept like a spot for him. And I can't remember the specifics behind that.
I think roster construction looks a lot different these days.
Is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah, and maybe in Jalen Smith's scenario, since he missed his rookie year, they kept him on the non-football injury list.
Maybe
because
that was it.
If it happens prior to your career, it's technically a non-football injury. So I think maybe that's where that got a little bit confusing. But what what they can do with him next year is just put him on PUP, physically unable to perform, and they can keep him on that PUP list through training camp so that they can use his spot during camp. And then whenever the season comes around, they can place him on IR. Doesn't necessarily have to be a season-ending IR. And if he can return in week 15, then they can pull him off IR in that instance. Yeah.
Okay. The Cowboys do have a game. They do have a game coming up on Sunday in Carolina against a really, really bad Carolina Panthers team. Carolina is favored. I like that picture of the great Andy Dalton, the former TCU quarterback and Cowboys quarterback, is back in his role as number 2 behind former first round, number 1 overall pick Bryce Young, who seems like he might be, I have a clue, he might be pretty good. This is a game where I think people would say, oh, the Cowboys are going to win. Carolina's 3-8. Yeah, they're 3-8, but they're getting better. They actually played with the Eagles much longer than I thought they would. I got to tell you, I'm not feeling this one at all for the Cowboys. Are you?
I am. I
think really?
This Panthers defense is awful. It's so bad. And
as bad as Cincinnati?
It's worse. It's way worse.
Okay.
And I think it's a situation where if they can control the time of possession, they can run the ball with Rico Dowdle as they've done in the last few weeks. I think they could pull out a win in this one. Only Saquon Barkley has more rushing yards than Rico Dowdle since week 9. That's 5 weeks of game time. Who would have thought? Maybe.
You know what? I'm going to give myself credit. I thought he could play. I really did. I'm patting myself on the back because I said it before the season started. Every year there's some guy who falls out of the sky and is a pretty good running back for fantasy guys.
That's fair.
And I thought Dowdle could be that guy. Now, obviously, there were extenuating circumstances that prevented him from getting the ball. But go back to the game in Pittsburgh. I still can't believe they didn't commit to him right then.
Yeah.
He was good that game. He was terrific that game. And it's crazy to think the Cowboys went in and beat Pittsburgh on the road. Yeah. Pittsburgh's pretty good. So you're telling me you think they can beat Carolina?
I do. I think if they can run the ball with the way that they have over the last few weeks, if they can get pressure on Bryce Young, then I think they can win this game. I do.
Go back. I want to go back to a previous topic, Overshown. Does that injury, do you think, change their draft board?
Yeah, I think so. I think if there's a linebacker there in the first or second round that they like, why not go grab him? There's a guy in Jahad Campbell at Alabama that I think is phenomenal who could potentially be there in the second round. That's a guy who kind of matches that skill set and can be flexible for them in case they decide to move on from Eric Kendricks. But you're looking at a 2025 linebacker scenario where Kendricks is a free agent, so they would have to make a decision on bringing him back. You have Maris Leofau. I think he could. I think.
Do you really?
I think with this injury to Overshown now, he could. And if Mike Zimmer is back, that increases his chances drastically. Now, if Mike Zimmer's not back, maybe not. But you have Maris Leofau. Then after that, that's where things get a little hazy. Damone Clark, I don't expect him to be back next year. And if he is, it's not going to be in a featured role. Buddy Johnson is a special teams guy. Nick Vigil's a special teams guy. So, they're going to have to get creative with what they do at the linebacker position. Okay, speaking of creative, Stephen Jones, the Cowboys vice president, said on the radio this week, I believe with 105.3 The Fan, that, it's going to be really, really tight this offseason. We don't have the money. He told the Star Telegram. Yes, he did. I'm sorry about that. He did. Yeah, you're right. No, I'm glad you corrected me on that. That's not cool of me to do that. Thank you very much. He said it to you. You're right. You were there. I'm sorry. I feel really bad about that. So he told Nick Harris this, because you're right. That, hey, same thing. We don't have any money. I wrote that they should go get T. Higgins. You basically said it's, a home run miracle. It's a Hail Mary to go get T. Higgins. Mm-hmm. Why is it so many other teams that are up against it, let's just call a spade, the Philadelphia Eagles, can somehow magically figure out a way to go get guys in the offseason, and this team only shops on the discount rack? It's tough. I think there's a disconnect in Frisco as to what their cap flexibilities actually look like. And I'm not sure where that disconnect stems from. I don't believe it comes from a Jones. I don't. That's interesting. I think this is a situation where they have an understanding of where their limitations are, and I don't think they necessarily have to be that way. I think it's a decision that is being made to not put pressure on 2026, 2027, and further. They want to be able to maximize the back end of Dak and Lamb's contracts. And if they do that, then they can't really spend big in 2025. They're stacking up the void money, and it's more than they've been accustomed to since this new salary cap has kind of integrated this void money in the last 10 to 15 years. And I think they're starting to see the limitations of that. You look at the void money that they're potentially going to have going forward if Zach Martin is gone, if DeMarcus Lawrence is gone, Brandon Cooks, Ezekiel Elliott, certainly. That stuff is going to start to stack up as well. I think they're trying to stay away from that void money going forward.
So explain to me this. I can't think of a team in recent memory that went for it like the LA Rams did a couple years ago. Now, it nearly blew up in their face, and they lost, the Super Bowl to the Bengals. Mm-hmm. They were that close. That game was that close. And if the Cincinnati Bengals win that game in the Super Bowl a couple years ago, this conversation is different. Hell, if Jalen Ramsey, there was a play in the last minute of that Super Bowl where Aaron Donald was destroying them.
Yeah.
And if they could have blocked him for one more second, Jalen Ramsey was lined up against Jamar Chase, and Jalen Ramsey fell down. And Jamar Chase had a free run to the end zone. Cincinnati scores. That's how open he was. But Donald made the play. The Rams win the Super Bowl. And when you win a Super Bowl, it validates everything that you just did. So then we all know what they did to go for it. And they won it, so it was worth it. Signed guys, traded guys, all that stuff. Now they're back and they're pretty good again. Despite all that, this team, I'm talking Dallas, they don't even go get guys. And I think it stems from their offseason in 2011, 12, 10, someplace in there when they signed Brandon Carr. Yeah. And they're like, we're not doing that again. That, to me, is why I'm convinced why they're not doing it. I don't get it. At this point, it's been 12 years ago. The salary cap is to Mars. What is their reluctance to sit there and say, if we're going to get better, we've got to eat a contract and go get one of these guys? Forget Derrick Henry. I'm talking about a player.
Yeah. Is
there just, Nick, you've been in that building. Did they just think as an organization, we're just not going to play in that? We're not going to play on that poker table.
I've had extensive conversations on this topic, especially this past offseason. And it's like Stephen Jones said, it's something they anticipated going into last year and going into this year as well. That's where this conversation kind of stemmed from this week. I don't have an answer for you. I really don't. It's a tough, convoluted conversation. And to be honest, I look forward to educating myself to the fullest extent on salary cap this offseason because I feel like we're going to have to.
I just think do you think it's disingenuous? I mean, do you think it's just BS that these guys are thrown out? Because I know this team consistently will wait to the 11th hour, 59th minute, and 59th second to sign a free agent.
Yeah.
Or pardon me. No, not a free agent. One of their own guys to a contract extension. Right?
Look at
Dak. And they're going to do it with Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
They're going to pay Micah Parsons $1 trillion. And all you got to see is the difference of this defense with this season with and without Micah Parsons. He is the reason why, a huge reason why they have been competitive in these games. Teams can't block them. Great. Okay. So by doing that, I've often thought, okay, you're screwing yourselves because you guys are out having fun on a vacation. Literally. I'm not kidding. And that's fine. It's their team. They can do whatever they want. But Nick, the thing that's frustrating to me, and I think it is for Cowboys fans, is all these other teams are getting better through those moves. And this team is just saying, well, we're going to operate like the Bengals and the Steelers, and we're just going to do this through drafts, and that's it. And it's like they don't even look at another option.
Yeah.
And that's the part I think it's so frustrating. And then it's demeaning. It's demoralizing when you see this week Forbes comes out with the most valuable franchises in sports, and the Cowboys are number one. Now, I know valuation of franchises has nothing to do with the salary cap, right? Those are different animals.
Yeah.
But still, it's the idea, wait a minute, you have all this money and you don't want to go get this guy?
Yeah.
Can you've worked, and I can't get my head around that anymore.
I'm with you.
Are you really?
I'm with you 100%. I don't think it's BS though that the Jones are trying to throw at people. I think that's a misconception.
Okay.
I don't think it's BS that they are trying to tell the fans that they don't have any money when in reality they do. I don't think it's necessarily the case there. I think they don't think they have the money or flexibility.
Do
when
they?
in reality they do. I think that they do. There is a way to create money within the salary cap. They can create up to $100 million going into next year with certain moves that they could do. Would they want to do some of those moves? Probably not. I think in reality, you could create $40 million in a realistic world. I don't think they see the flexibility to do that.
I wrote it, thanks in part to your help, about T. Higgins. It would take some creativity. I'm a big T. Higgins fan. I think he's a terrific player. And I know Joe Burrow has gone out of his way, including after the game against the Cowboys on Monday night, say, I think we can bring this guy back. I don't. Do you think a T. Higgins type makes a significant upgrade and a difference for the Dallas offense?
Yeah, I think
type.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would. There's going to be some interesting receiver free agents in general. They're going to have to go get one or two because this receiver draft class is awful. Unless they get a guy in the first round, I don't see them stacking talent in that receiver room through the draft. So they're going to have to go get somebody in free agency, no doubt.
Okay, last thing we're going to talk about. You and I both think the Cowboys are going to win on Sunday in Carolina?
Yes, I do. Okay. I think the Carolina's favored for the first time in like 33 games or something like that.
It's a 3-point.
Which is mind blowing, but I do think the Cowboys get this done. It's expected to be a rainy game, 80% chance of rain. Fun. I think that's going to be even an added layer to them committing to the run. Both teams. Now, granted, they have to stop Chuba Hubbard. That's not going to be an easy task. That's a talented running back behind an offensive line that has really put it together this year. But I think Rico Dowdle can get it done.
All right, we're going to talk about one more thing before we wrap this up. College football playoff is set. It's not a playoff. It's an invitational. We have two teams from the great state of Texas in the playoff, and they will be playing in the opening weekend, which is not this weekend, but next weekend. Everybody gets by. Texas is the 5th seed and will host number 12th ranked Clemson. 12th seed Clemson. SMU is the 11th seed, and they will play at Penn State. Other games that weekend include, that might be it, Indiana versus Notre Dame, a game that means a lot to me. I grew up in the great state of Indiana. So if you would have told me that Indiana is playing Notre Dame in a playoff game, I would have been like, what? Are you insane? Give me some of that. Whatever you're smoking, I want it. And the other game I'm missing, I'm looking at the bracket right now, is Tennessee at Ohio State. Okay, I know you have talked about going down to Austin for that game. Of the two teams we've got locally here, Austin is semi-local, I guess. I like Texas to get at least to the semifinals. I think if SMU was playing that game in Dallas, they would win. They are 7.5-point underdog. Do you see SMU winning at Penn State?
I had a little bit of hope that I was retaining until I saw a report today that the wind chill expected for that game in Happy Valley is 13 degrees.
Oh.
And I just don't see SMU overcoming the elements in that one. That one's going to be tough. And the whiteout crowd at Penn State's really started to put it together over the last few weeks as well. I saw them earlier in the season against Illinois, and they were just so bland, awful, especially offensively. Agree. But as the years gone on, they started to really rally around Drew Aller, their quarterback. I think they're starting to find some consistency behind Nicholas Singleton as well. I think they get it done against SMU. But as far as Texas goes, they go as far as Quinn Ewers goes. And unless he's not playing at his best, they could lose as early as the Clemson game.
You think they could lose to Clemson?
I think they could, absolutely. You look
They're
at
11-point favorite.
Yeah, I would definitely take the plus 11 there. But I think
– Do you really?
There's one aspect of this game that I think is fascinating,
which is
Clemson quarterback Cade Klubnik.
I know, I love this.
Going back to his hometown of Austin to play against the team that they recruited him. Don't get me wrong, but they definitely chose some other guys over him.
100%.
So I think it'll be a fascinating storyline as we get closer to game day, and I think Clemson, they are still built to win, especially in the trenches. Texas is as well, but I don't trust that Quinn Ewers can't throw them out of a game sometimes. If it was a different starting quarterback at Texas, I think I'd have a different feel about it.
What if the different quarterback was named Manning?
Yeah. If only, right?
Seriously, let's just throw this out because all the reports are suggesting that Quinn's time at UT is done. It doesn't mean he's going to go to the draft, which had always been the plan, but maybe he transfers to a different school because clearly they're ready to go to Arch Manning.
Yeah.
It is probably Quinn. This is probably Quinn's last run. And he's been very good. I mean, he's been very good. But, in terms of Quinn, this is a very interesting time for him. Yeah. Very interesting. The transfer portal is open. A lot of kids have thrown their name in it. What do you make of his pro prospects right now?
Yeah, I actually talked to a couple of executives at the league meeting earlier this week talking about quarterbacks and just how this class is stacking up, and not a lot of guys like Quinn. I don't think it's a situation where there's a lot of confidence in him right now. Granted, I think he has a couple of things playing into his favor. A, there's not a lot of confidence in this quarterback class as a whole. And B, he still has the college football playoffs in front of him. Who's to say that he doesn't ball out in these 3 or 4 games that he has and is able to improve his stock and stamp his placement as a first rounder? But I think that would be tough.
Who do you like to win the national championship?
I think I did my bracket earlier this week. I think I had Oregon. I think I had Oregon pulling it out. Or did I have Oregon? I don't even. I know Georgia has the best path. We could say that for sure.
Georgia has the best path. I think there is an upset waiting to happen. I think Boise State's going to get to the Orange Bowl.
Yeah,
I think Boise State gets a bye, and they will play the winner of SMU Penn State in Boise, or pardon me, in the Fiesta Bowl rather. I think Boise's going to win that game.
Yeah, very well could.
And then I think Georgia beats Boise. I mean, I think it's going to be Oregon versus Georgia. There might be an upset or two. I think Indiana can beat Notre Dame, but I think it's going to be 1 versus 2. I think it'll be Oregon versus Georgia. I think that Oregon team is really, really good. And if I had to bet right now, all things are fluid. I'd probably put my money on Oregon.
Mac, are you a Heisman voter?
Yes, I am.
Are you allowed to reveal your vote, or you have to wait until after?
I think I have to wait.
Okay.
In fact, now that I say that, I have a Heisman vote and I have a Baseball Hall of Fame vote. I'm allowed to say the Baseball Hall of Fame one, but I don't think I'm allowed. And I know, in fact, I'm not supposed to. I'm not supposed to say who I voted for. Obviously, I've already voted.
We'll come back next
week. But here's the funny part: I voted, and I don't know who I voted third.
We had this conversation. That's right.
Yes, I've really thought about it. I'm like, who did I vote third? And I keep meaning to go into I have account. I think I have an account, but I don't know my password because I cleared my cookies.
You gotta call Heisman customer support, and they'll ping you to somebody in India, and you gotta talk to them.
Well, some of their menu options have recently changed, so I have to go through the whole thing.
Yeah. Reggie Bush had to work on customer service for about 60 hours to get that trophy back, so you might get him.
All right, this has been a lot of fun. Cowboys and Panthers on Sunday at noon. That's how you know the game is a dog. Cowboys and Panthers for all your Cowboys coverage needs. Be sure to check us out on StarTelegram.com. We will see you next week.